So as you kind of see those come through, feel free to chime in if there's some specific questions. But we wanted to educate you on your lunch break here and provide some valuable information on how things are really working. I wanted to share a brief anecdote as we get started here. Before I got on the call, I was on with KSL Radio, and they were asking me why we're ending school early, and I didn't know what they meant. And this is actually the third time I've gotten this question in the last week, but they indicated, well, we saw this email you sent out to parents that said that instruction would end on the 15th. Well, the last day of school for us was already scheduled to be May 22nd. As you can imagine, that last week of school is filled with a number of activities, normally field days and locker cleanouts and a variety of other activities, and also allow time for our teachers to be able to get their grades inputted so students can know what those grades are and be able to have a chance to rectify anything if appropriate. So I was a little bit surprised that the news was indicating that we were actually ending early. A lot of the things that we're doing, I don't think are any different than we normally do. We usually do set up a time where we end new instruction, allow kids to make up at the end of the year. I think this year it's a little more public and publicized simply by virtue of the fact that the teachers at home probably need a little bit more relief in sight, a light at the end of the tunnel, as it were. And so that's not new or unusual, but it's new and unusual for our time. So really, hopefully we can answer a lot of those types of questions as we kind of go through this presentation. Again, educating during pandemic, we thought about calling this distance learning for champions, hence the medal. So we're going to be using some of our Bitmojis to help us along this process. So if you get nothing else out of the presentation, perhaps you will be entertained for a few minutes. Mike, you want to talk about these?
Sure, yeah. And I would echo what Ben said. We've had some people that have misunderstood our intent as well. We end up June 5th, and our last day of instruction will be right after, last day to assign new work will be Memorial Day weekend. After that, it'll be wrap up, opportunity for students to, opportunity for students to make up their work. Sorry, I must have swallowed something wrong. It's really not that emotional for me, I promise.
All right, you want me to talk for a second?
Yeah, I think I'm good now. I think I've passed it. So, but I can't even start to talk about helpful tips and hints without really just giving a huge shout out to our teachers and what they've been able to do and how we've been able to really change things and move things forward in a lot of good ways. There are a lot of drawbacks to distance learning and online learning that, we miss the interactions, but we've really tried to help our students, our parents, and our teachers to just focus on the essential learning outcomes. What do we want our kids to know and be able to do? And part of that has been an adjustment to try to minimize the expected time for students to be online. An 8-hour school day or 7-hour school day doesn't have to equate to a 7-hour online school day. Several students many students are spending hours every day online, but we've tried to minimize whatever we can for students to be online. And then of course, when it comes to grading and giving credit, we above all want to make sure that grading practices do no harm and that they alleviate mental and emotional stress to the extent that they can. And we just, I see some strategies here that we've got up here as well for parents. And sometimes you just got to step away and give yourself permission to unplug and step away from a lot of the learning. We've encouraged both our students and our teachers to do that and look for ways to grow and to stretch yourselves, but also be mindful of your situation and express gratitude for what you've got. Anything else you'd add to that, Ben?
Yeah, I'd just say that as a parent of 5 children at age range, first grade all the way up to a junior in high school, there's a plethora of expectations. And I keep coming home to my poor frantic wife who is so stressed about a variety of different things. And so my students attend in Davis School District, and happenstance would have it that the student who's getting the most amount of work is the first grader. Isn't that a little bit weird? It's not something you would expect. And I finally had to, this last week, just tell my wife, she's going to be fine. She's really going to be okay. I think there's this expectation here that if she doesn't get through her 4.5 hours worth of work on a daily basis, and that's just because she takes forever, not necessarily because that's how much is being assigned, it's just her personality. My high school son is loving life right now. He is able to plow through all this work on his own timeline. He has an easy day and a hard day, and so he can kind of gear up emotionally. Different kids are handling this in different ways, but I know that our parents, to some extent, are kind of freaking out a little bit. And we just really want to emphasize the fact that we never expected that digital instruction would be a full-on replacement or substitute for in-person instruction. And so if your kid's just reading 20 minutes a day and getting some of the basic instruction in to kind of keep up, they're doing just great. And really, that's the intent and purpose. Would we like to see them continue to grow and develop? Yeah, but we also recognize that some of our households, instruction's not even occurring by virtue of the fact that some of our parents just don't have the capacity, ability. They might be working 3 jobs right now. So each household is different, and we're just offering a plethora of flexibility to ensure that we're giving each individual student the support that they need. And at the same time, they're able to maintain their mental health and be able to get through what is, in fact, a crisis, a pandemic, the best way that they can. Did I say that right, Michael?
No, you said it perfectly, and I think that's a great segue to what the next slide talks about. In our district, we've really tried to focus on ensuring that our students and our parents are well off mentally and emotionally. And so these are a couple of screenshots of information that we have on our website. We've got a COVID-19 specific information page with tips about how to deal with the stress and emotions that come with this. And we also have had our superintendent interview several people, including epidemiologists and high school students, who, if you want to get a shot in the arm and really feel good about our current generation, watch this episode number 31, or listen to it, I should say. He just has a real candid conversation with our students, and they offer such great insight and give us such hope. I'm amazed at how well they're coping with it. As Ben mentioned, I think students are coping with it in many ways better than we as parents are. I've got 4 students of my own that some are dealing with it very well, some are taking a little slower, and it's just we want to emphasize the importance of staying emotionally well as during this time, not just physically well. We all want to be physically safe and stay away from infection and contraction of this disease, but our mental wellness and our emotional wellness is just as important in many cases.
I would just continue to point out, this is on our website, our distance learning stuff. I want to point out that I get emails every day, and at the district level. I don't know why they contact me through Facebook or on Twitter or via my email and say, my teacher's just sending too much content home, or I can't get online on this particular app. And my first question back to them is, did you talk to your teacher? And often the answer is no. I would say, secondly, to talk to the principal. If you're feeling like you're getting too much content, if you feel like you're overwhelmed on one particular student or a certain subject area at the secondary level, reach out to that teacher and say, hey, I think my student is feeling overwhelmed. I know I'm feeling overwhelmed. They should be willing to work with you. In reality, if we have the parent support, that's all we're looking for. We just want to know that we're meeting the needs of the student, whatever that level of support is. Again, we want to be providing differentiated instruction and support as appropriate. So I have here also on our homepage a tech support line. If people are having tech issues, they can't get on a certain type of app, or the Chrome browser's not working for whatever reasons, that's also on our distance learning page. This is on our homepage, and this is the actual page when you go to this link here. And there's a plethora of resources there as well. I wanted to point out, in Granite District in particular, we have 75% of refugee students live in Granite School District boundaries. Obviously, a number of those are in high poverty circumstances. We have one of the most socioeconomically diverse populations in the state and actually nation in terms of diversity of that population. We have the most impoverished families in the state and some of the most wealthy families in the state. And we need to provide support and help to all those, which is why we launched these Wi-Fi buses, 35 buses that go district-wide to a variety of locations. We have over 300 students a day logging into those buses. They're able to socially distance, go to an open space area where there's some tables and other places to sit down, do their work, log in, and do that in a secure fashion. It's a great resource we're excited to provide to a number of our families. This is the memes coming out on social media are brilliant. One of my favorite is the one that said, as a homeschool parent, teacher, I've already expelled the students and the teacher was caught drinking. So we recognize this is this is difficult. This is not easy. I think we all, as Michael mentioned earlier, have a greater appreciation for the work that teachers do. It's not an easy job. We launched a service with the University of Utah and some of our psychologists, and they've created some content here, parenting tips for parents, or teaching tips for parents. And so this is one of those clips. You can go to their YouTube channel, BRST Remote Learning, and they're in, I want to say 10 different languages you can find these little video clips in.
Are your kids having trouble finishing their schoolwork? Today's tip, first then statements. State the expectation and the reward they get after. Ignore complaining and remind them of your expectations. Then reward them as soon as they finish the task.
I would definitely recommend, in addition to setting some of those incentives that you might want to throw in addition to getting their homework done, that they also do a chore and make sure your house gets tidied up along the way. Did you want to add anything to that, Michael?
Yeah, I think our house and our yard has never looked better because our kids are anxious to get outside, and we've used these tips of first you can weed the garden and then you can go play video games, or then you can go do something else. And so our house and yard have never looked better. Naturally, I think all of these lead to the next question. All right, if I'm learning from home, how am I getting graded? And I think that's our next slide there. Is just each district has taken a different approach on this. And I just have to hand it to our teachers. And I put the failure is not an option logo up there from Apollo 13. And really, our teachers have they've kind of Apollo 13'd this entire quarter, where they've put together things in a matter of hours and days, which under normal circumstances would have taken us weeks, months, maybe years to make the strides we have made in online and blended learning. And our teachers have just been remarkably resilient and innovative and flexible. And it's been a real tribute to them. And I want to give a shout out to our parents as well, who have partnered with teachers in this. No one will take the place of teachers, but our parents have stepped up and taken that role in a really great way. And we've stressed throughout this that teachers need to continue to provide meaningful instruction, rich content, and things that they would normally be doing in a classroom. And we want to try to avoid the gaps in learning where possible. But we also acknowledge, as Ben said, not every student has the great circumstances of parents being able to be in the home and watch and kind of bird dog them to make sure they're doing their homework. And not every student has the same kind of access and bandwidth on the internet to be able to do this. And at the bottom line, at the end of the day, we don't know all of the circumstances that our students are in. And although we've tried to reach out to our students, not all have been actively engaged as we would like to on the online learning process. So as a result, when it comes to grading, grades are simply a way to communicate learning to parents and students. Really, that's what, when they boil down to, that's what they're supposed to be doing. And our traditional way of grading, A to F, has we've had to take a second look at that and look at this. What are we really doing? And when it comes to failing a student, when we got together as a cabinet and talked over this issue, we just felt that when it came to failing, that we couldn't in good conscience give a student an F grade when we really don't know all of the circumstances and can't comprehend all the circumstances surrounding that. And so when it comes to F grades or failing grades, F grades from this quarter will be converted to a no credit grade, or an NC, on a report card. And what that means is it doesn't hurt or help the student's grade point average, their GPA, but it also doesn't give credit for the class. And so they don't fail the class. They're not branded with a scarlet F for the rest of their life, but they will not get credit for that. We will continue to work with students to be able to make up classwork and turn things in, even over the summer if possible and where necessary, so the students can get all those. And we want to, that's our most important priority, is that the learning's taken place. If it's just a matter of when it took place or how it took place or where it took place, then we can work with the kids on that. The other thing we're doing is giving kids an option for those that are passing their classes, but they don't want to, maybe they're not passing at the rate with the letter grade they want. If they're concerned about their grades, we want to push them to the teacher and make sure that they're understanding and they're in contact with their teacher, because they'll be able to answer all the questions. But after May 22nd, students who are passing but have experienced any sort of difficulty, they can opt for a pass or a P grade by working with their teacher on that, or they can continue on with the traditional grades we have. We want to give maximum flexibility to our teachers and to our principals who issue these grades at our schools and on the report cards, and we trust them and we know that their grades are important to them. But we also want to give every benefit we can to the students and give them as many options and flexibility as we can. So failure really isn't an option for fourth quarter, simply because we don't know what that F really represents. It's because they didn't try, is it because they didn't have access to the online learning that they should have, or is it because they had home circumstances that just weren't conducive to online learning? So we want to give that benefit of the doubt to them, and that's why we're going to be issuing no credit grades for those that do not, and I should emphasize that that's regarding high school graduation credit. We can still opt for that at the middle levels, but the stakes just aren't as high in the middle school and the elementary levels when it comes to earning credit. So if you have questions about this, or if you'd like to get into more specifics, please feel free to add a question in the comment section, and we can address those towards the end. Is that right?
Yep. I would point out too, in Granite, we're not that much different. I've got two slides here. We're actually automatically, just going back to that equity issue, the reality is when all these students come to one classroom with one teacher, there is the opportunity to learn, and it's consistent among all those students. But when there is distance learning and each household looks different, that opportunity is no longer equitable. And so it's really inappropriate to simply go, when the rules of the game have changed in the middle of the game itself, we have to alter the goalposts a little bit. And so in terms of what we're doing in Granite, it's not dissimilar to Jordan's efforts. If you have an A, you will get that A. If you're an A- or below, you will be issued a pass automatically. If you are a D- or below, you'll get an incomplete. And so what will happen is, if you still want to get a grade issued for scholarship purposes, for some of these other components, particularly at the secondary level, all you have to do is request that in writing, and they'll change that pass grade to an actual grade. However, if you are an F, we're not going to fail you. And a lot of people have come at us, especially on social media, and indicated, why wouldn't you, if they're not even trying, how do we assess that? Mike, can you go out to your students' homes and see what the environment looks like? Can you see if the parents are really doing their best to see what the Wi-Fi signal looks like in their home? There are just so many variables there that we have no control to be able to gauge. It's just so silly for us to be able to even try to do so. So
amen to that, Ben. I would just add a big amen to that. We just simply don't know. And if we're going to err, we're going to err on the side of the student, and we're going to give them the maximum benefit of the doubt. We can work with them when this is all said and done. We can go back and we can work through some things, and there are ways to make up work. And really, we're focusing on learning. We want this to be a learning game, not a grading game.
You know, I teach. I'm an adjunct at BYU, and I've used kind of a proficiency standard. I don't really care when people get their assignments in, as long as they get them in. The reality is, did you learn the content? At the end of the day, I want to know that you actually knew the material and that you were proficient in it. And so really our grading alternative system kind of reflects that as well. If you get an F in this fourth quarter, it will be adjusted to an incomplete. You will have until all through summer to make that up, and all through the first term of next fall to get that grade figured out with your current teacher. If you're a graduating senior, you still have that process where you can get those Fs made up. They'll be considered incompletes on your transcripts for that purpose, and that won't harm your GPA. And that's really what we're trying to do, is make sure that GPAs don't get altered in a negative way. If the students do want those grades reflected, there's certainly that option. We're not doing citizenship scores this last term either, and so that won't alter those CPAs either. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so the big question is, when it comes to graduation, I mean, we all feel so bad for our high school seniors who missed out on, think of all of the rites of passages, from the proms, the senior dinner dance, senior ball, your last season in a sport of your choice, or in the performing arts, or clubs, or other extracurricular activities. These seniors have been dealt a pretty tough hand, and so we're mindful of that. We are trying and brainstorming every way possible to make things happen that can be happening within the confines of the state recommendations and the health department's recommendations. And so we're taking this slowly, methodically, and carefully, thoughtfully, I should add, that when it comes time to planning graduation and other year-end activities. We've sent a survey out to every single home in our school district where a high school student resides, to get ideas and opinions regarding graduation. The survey just closed this week, actually, and we're going to be talking tonight in our school board meeting about options we have, and that may be more made clear. We're still more than a month out from graduation, so we have some time to put the finishing touches on things. And if you look back to a month from now, so much can change. Think back to a month ago and where we were and how much has changed then. So we want to be careful with how we're approaching this, and we're looking at everything from graduation drive-ins to virtual graduations, which by the way aren't very popular, and I don't blame them for that. Just all the options we can, as well as we're looking into the possibilities of continuing the seasons of sport and performance throughout the summer. And maybe if they can't play in the traditional May tournaments, maybe we can look at some summer tournaments. And there's been discussions about that. They're all just that at this point, discussions and options, because there's so many unknown factors. But at the end of the day, we want to celebrate our seniors. We will find a way to celebrate and commemorate our seniors. This will be an unforgettable graduation either way. They will always be known and tagged as the COVID-19 graduating class. And for that, it's unique, but we want to make it as special and as memorable as we can for these kids. Our hearts really go out to them and their families who have worked 18 years to get here.
Yeah, I think we're cognizant of the fact that we don't want to diminish this accomplishment in any way, shape, or form. That being said, we do plan on offering a 20-pack roll of toilet paper with every diploma issued, just in light of the circumstances. We actually just sent out another survey comparable to Jordan. We sent out a survey asking for ideas if a traditional ceremony was not going to be feasible. Sure enough, a week or so after that occurred, the Huntsman Center notified us that those were not going to be possible due to health department restrictions. We looked at some later dates, potentially in August. Those are still on the table as an option. But our overwhelming response on that survey was to simply postpone with some social distancing measure, do them on the football fields. I love our students. I want to be really clear. They're brilliant, they're creative, but some of them are not taking into consideration all of their potential classmates and the impact of COVID-19 on this particular rite of passage. I don't know how many people are really interested in coming to a high school graduation in the middle of July on a football field. And so even doing that in the evening, you're still going to have 80-degree temperatures. We're trying to help our students understand that if that's what they want to do, we'll do that. But at the same time, please take into consideration that not everybody will be able to participate in a postponed ceremony. The reality is we have a lot of LDS kids that are going to go off on their missions. We're going to have students who go off to college. We have a number of students are going to join the military and be shipped off to boot camp. And just not everybody's going to be able to participate in a postponed ceremony. We have made it clear that we're not going to postpone those ceremonies past mid-August and into the next school year. But we would be willing to host what at that point in time would be alumni events for this class of 2020 if we end up doing some sort of virtual ceremony. Once restrictions are lifted, being able to do a large barbecue. I think our students are looking for that social interaction that comes with those final days of school, the yearbook signing, the parties, the celebrations. I think those are important. And so in addition to the options that we're providing, we're looking at some of those options as well for our students. Sorry about that, Mike. You want to go?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we just thought we'd wrap this up by sending messages from our districts, our respective districts, and just overall, just how much we miss our teachers, miss interacting with our students. There are 57,000 reasons that I have a job, and I'm missing every one of them. And it's hard to. None of us had ever envisioned this day coming, and we just want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to our parents for helping us get through this, but mostly our teachers and our students who have just been champions. And we put together, this is a message from our superintendent that highlights some of those feelings.
Hello, I'm Superintendent Anthony Godfrey. We're all living through unprecedented times. We know that you miss being here at school. Please know also how much we miss having you here, but we hope you're home and safe with your families. While these halls and common areas are empty now, we can't wait for the time when they'll be filled with students, faculty, and staff again. When our playing fields and stadiums are filled with competing student athletes and our bleachers are filled with cheering crowds. When all of our cafeterias will be filled with good food, fun, and friendship. And most importantly, when our classrooms will be filled with students, teachers, and learning. Our schools may be empty, but we're still here for you, cheering you on.
Miss you guys. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
Connecting in new ways that provide unique learning opportunities.
Nothing is impossible.
I am personally so proud of district employees, students, and parents for making sure learning continues under these most challenging of circumstances. It is most important right now for all of us to focus on taking care of ourselves, our families, and our friends, and doing what we can to help move learning forward in our individual circumstances. I'm also very grateful for the tremendous support we've had from our cities and communities. Please know that as a district, we are committed to continuing to provide all students with a quality learning experience during dismissal, to make adjustments, be flexible, and listen to concerns. We're currently working hard to develop a plan to provide a meaningful, memorable, and personal celebration for the incredible graduating class of 2020. Thank you for your commitment and dedication to Jordan School District and to continuing education for the more than 56,000 students we serve. And remember, we are all stronger together, and together we'll get through this.
That's a great video. I wanted to share our Facebook page. I think now more than ever, we have seen opportunities to celebrate success. I'm getting more content than I ever wanted to see some of the innovative and creative things that schools are doing to get out and meet and visit with our students. As Superintendent Godfrey mentioned, the support from our local municipalities and is unprecedented. We're seeing so many folks coming and participating and offering help and support for our families, and it's just so appreciated. I don't know if you caught last week, actually just after there was an aftershock last week, and there was a video of one of our teachers doing her lesson prep for the day, and the aftershock hit, and it was a pretty significant one. And she just kept right on going. She says, well, there's the aftershock. And I think that's reflective of kind of who we are as a community, as teachers, as students, that we just keep working through these hard circumstances and the difficult things that have been thrown our way to make sure that our students are taken care of. Anything else you want to add to that, Michael?
No, just appreciate you being here. I'm more than willing to answer any questions that anybody has, and thanks for indulging us and letting us talk about this.
So I'm not sure where I see the questions come up. So
there's some in the chat, and Trish Hull actually asked, what if COVID spikes in the fall? What are you planning for that?
Yeah, that's a question that's on a lot of people's minds, and we've heard from various experts that it may not be a question of if it spikes; it's just a matter of when and how much, right? And so we're starting those discussions right now. They've been ongoing. That if this were to happen again, we take our directives from the state, from the governor's office, from the state superintendent's office, and from the county health departments and the state health departments. And so we would react accordingly and in the best interest of public safety, of course. And what that means, I guess if we did have to do something again, heaven forbid, that would be terrible. But we have a template down for how we can educate during these times now. And I think we've all learned from it, and it would only get better. So I sincerely hope and pray that does not happen. And I'm an optimist, so I'm gonna hope for the best, but we have also prepared for the worst.
I would agree with that. I think actually I just finished a news media interview on this very topic about what happens, the what if, and I think we all need to take. I think there's going to come a scenario or situation where many families, regardless of whether we're allowed to back into our schools at that time, many of our families are not comfortable sending their kids back, regardless. And that could be upwards of 25% of our students. And so we're planning on every possible contingency, whether that's continued distance learning at that time or a full-fledged schedule back in progress with some limited restrictions on certain types of activities due to social distancing. That being said, I think we will, the worst news out of all this is that there are no more snow days because we have figured out a way on such short notice to implement distance learning. And so,
amen to that.
And so this has pretty much killed the snow day off for good. We really do have the ability to shoot out information and provide learning and instruction on short notice. And I would expect that even if we do have kids coming back to the classroom, that we'll still have a number of students who will require support. I want to point out that for our secondary students, that will not be that different. We actually have a number of students who already participate on online courses anyway. And so this may be an opportunity to further enhance those offerings and build up those schedules to offer more classes using that mode of instruction. But it certainly looks different at the elementary level, as we discussed earlier.
It does, and I think this has just permanently changed us. Ben joked a little bit about the snow day. That was Superintendent Godfrey is brand new this year. This is his first year as a superintendent, and his worst fear going into this was having to call a snow day. Well, we had a snow day, and we thought that was something, because we tried every which way to make that up in a good way and a convenient way. And then the whole pandemic happened. And so this is a snow day times 1,000. But I agree with Ben. It's completely changed our paradigm, which when we talk about disruptive innovation, there are opportunities that will come and things that will change because of this stay-at-home order that we will look back on and think that, what would we have done without that? And so I want to always look for the silver lining in all of this. I know our teaching is going to improve. I know our access to students and our flexibility with students is going to improve. The emphasis has really shifted to learning regardless of time, place, or pace. We're really looking at a competency-based education model with this. And like I said earlier, this disruptive innovation this disruption has really caused us to innovate in a way we would never have done as quickly as this. So silver lining in all of that, and we are ready to face more challenges in the future, of course. But it'd be nice to get a little bit of normalcy back into our lives. I think we'd all agree with that.
I think there's many parents who will not survive another term of distance learning. So
it's so true.
It's tough on teachers too. I saw a question in the comments about what businesses can do to support teachers during this time. This has been tough on them. I've actually had a number of businesses reach out to offer to buy lunch for the teachers. We've tried to highlight those on our Facebook page to throw a little love towards those businesses that have come and supported them. Supplies have not been an issue, but I think teachers appreciate being recognized for the hard work and effort they're being made. So any small way is really not that small. It's meaningful to those teachers.
Right.
So if you do have the ability to provide something meaningful in that way, I think, I know in our district, we'd certainly love to recognize businesses who are stepping up and making those contributions.
Yeah, I would echo that and just add that next week is Teacher Appreciation Week. And so several of our PTAs, our local PTAs have been working on how to best recognize our teachers, and echo what Ben says. Traditionally, we would have them all get together and we'd give them a breakfast or a luncheon on their behalf, and we'd celebrate in some way. That's just not going to happen this year. And so we welcome any businesses that would like to partner with us. We've had several reach out to us. We can put you in touch with our foundation, which our Jordan Education Foundation, which can then help with that and the donations, anything like that, just to help our teachers feel appreciated and help recognize they are in many ways, isn't it amazing who all of a sudden become most vital to us in terms of healthcare workers, our truck drivers, our grocery store clerks to keep us going, and our teachers. And we really find we couldn't do it without our custodians working behind the scenes, without our nutrition workers. And it's just everybody is a part of the entire success.
So I have a question, Ben and Mike. I have 6 grandchildren who live with me, and they range from first grade to high school. And also, Ben, my first grader has the most homework and the most schoolwork of any of them. It's even the high school child. It's just crazy. I don't get it. But one of the things I've learned, and everybody I talk to has learned, the hardest thing we have is math. And if there was some way to send home parent teaching skills on understanding the new math, because we just look at it and go, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And they look at us like, didn't you go to college? What's wrong with you? So I don't know if that's a suggestion for, if it does come back, maybe say, here, parents, here's a math course, take this or something. I don't know. That's what we struggle with, number one.
I think you'll see as we continue to enhance our distance learning products and services, we're learning too. I think you're going to see more flipped classrooms. And what I mean by that is teachers recording instructional videos and then sending those out. And particularly in subject areas like math, where we do need, where we as parents need a little bit more help. Because I tell you what, I told my wife to just Google it. And it's a lot more problem-based solving skills they're trying to develop a lot more, we called them word problems when I was a kid. And you'd read a paragraph and have to disaggregate information and then problem solve that way, as opposed to a straight up formula. So it can be a little more challenging, the way that they're taking that approach on how we instruct on math. So I fully understand that concern. I would fully expect, again, that you're going to see these teachers start to develop additional resources, particularly in instruction via video. So please look for that, and feel free to make that tip to your teacher. I know that we did that to our son's 3rd grade teacher, and she started chiming in with a brief 5-minute video 2 to 3 times a week,
Right.
just on a couple of concepts, and it really made a huge difference for our child.
It's a great point. Great question and great perspective, Trish. Sorry, go ahead,
I
Barbara.
was just going to say, we now have a question about curiosity as to the extent of any damage to any of the schools based on the earthquake and the aftershocks.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about the math. We've heard the same feedback, Trish, and I think our teachers have responded well. And that's just online tutorials and videos that you can go back and watch and rewatch, so that you're not just missing it. If you happen to miss a lecture, if you happen to miss notes for that day, are important, and we're seeing that. We don't have anything. We've inspected every single one of our buildings 3 times in our school district, and fortunately, we are well off, and our buildings are sound. We did have some cosmetic damage to a couple of them. You may have seen some bricks fell off of a facade of one of our elementary schools. Thank heavens we weren't in school that day, but that was cosmetic, no structural damage, and we're just grateful our neighbors to the north took the brunt of that.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. We did actually have pretty extensive damage to one school in particular, and some moderate damage to another school. Westlake STEM Junior High has been condemned to the extent that we'll never send students in its current form to that building. That's a $40 million project. And so at the current time, knowing that either an extensive remodel will need to take place or a full rebuild, and that's up to our insurance company right now. They're going to, this is just like any sort of homeowner's claim. I don't know if you've ever had to do a homeowner's claim or even a car insurance claim, and you kind of go back and forth with your insurance and say, well, this is worth this much really, or this is worth this much, or did you see this ding over here? And so we have our own consultants working to identify all and make sure the insurance company evaluates every possible consideration to make sure our taxpayer dollars aren't going to have to replace something that the insurance should have to cover. And so in the meantime, that's at least a 2-year period where that building will be out of service. We conveniently closed this last December 2 elementaries in Granite School District due to, we've lost about 3,000 students in the last few decade or so. And so we are not a growing school district anymore. We're holding pat in some areas, and some areas are maturing. And then we do have some spots of growth, but in 2 areas we closed elementaries that we no longer needed. And one of those was Westbrook Elementary in the Taylorsville area, which is just down the Bangor Highway, about 6 minutes from Westlake. We actually reached out to a couple of other school districts, including Jordan and Canyons, to see if they had any facilities that we could use in the meantime. It was decided that it would be best to send them to Westbrook so we could keep that staff and those students intact. We're going to have to add some reloads there and a portable cafeteria, but the campus otherwise should be good, and we'll be providing, our insurance is paying for 10 buses, and we're hiring some new bus drivers to be able to take those routes. The other facility that experienced moderate damage was Magna, and Magna was Cypress High. And man, I don't know how that building didn't just come down all the way. I walked around it now. The classroom building seemed to have done quite well, with the exception in the middle on the top floor of that classroom building. It's a square classroom building, and in the middle is, at the top floor is the library. And the ceilings have cracked, the windows have popped out. There was extensive damage there, but we can block that area off and make those repairs prior to the fall. The other portion of Cypress High that had extreme damage was the pool area. There's an exterior pool wall there. That pool, Trish, how old is that pool? 75 years, 80 years old?
Yeah, it's really old.
It is the oldest pool in the state of
Utah.
Utah,
Yeah.
I believe. And so that wall was never intended to withstand that type of shaking. So we've actually put in some steel trusses to reinforce it. We've stripped the wall of the exterior brick that was actually coming off the wall through all the aftershocks. And we will actually replace that wall. Our insurance company will temporarily, so the building can last the next 4 years until the new building, which is already in the process of starting construction, will be opened. We had, as Mike mentioned, cosmetic damage in a number of other places. We actually, due to the last tremor, found a crack in the Hunter High pool. And so we'll actually have to drain that pool and make some repairs to that as well. We just notified our insurance company about that particular claim as well.
This is just a quick question on the pool. Are you going to actually be able to use the pool, or are you just making the building structurally sound?
Both. So
good.
It's a temporary fix. It's not, if we weren't planning on moving out of that building in the next 4 years, I think we would do something a little more extensive and long-term. But it will be a temporary fix to make sure that we can continue to use the pool at Cypress and that the building will be secured.
Okay, I guess it would be safe to say it was a blessing that kids were not in the school on the day of the earthquake.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, because the timing would have been pretty close, right?
Yeah, and I want to be clear most of you probably remember my bringing the 2017 bond pitch to the chamber and discussing that initiative. At that time in 2017, we had roughly, I want to say 56% of our buildings that we did not expect would be able to withstand a 7.0 earthquake or higher. So to that extent, we feel very fortunate that there was not more damage. I mean, that was a 5.7 earthquake, the first one, and then we've seen obviously significant aftershocks. If that had been even just 1 point higher on the Richter scale, we probably would have seen schools in the dozens that were never intended to withstand that kind of shaking that would be uninhabitable at this point in time.
Thank you for addressing that. So I appreciate the comment, Michael, of innovation, and I would suggest you all both experienced innovation on steroids as you quickly made changes to accommodate so many people, teachers and students and families and businesses, and the trickle effect that had. You know, in all of this chaos and craziness, I have to think that both of you all have an inspirational story that you could share of something that was just a wow, like, you know, people are just absolutely amazing. Ben, let's start with you.
I have many. I would say I have many on both sides. I have many shock and awe type stories where I'm just really blown away. For worse, and then others where I'm just brought to tears because of the kindness and the consideration. Most of those have to do with our teachers and their ability to persevere, and then just the incredible support that we see from parents. There's been a couple of businesses that have just really stepped up, and I would just point out one was a bread store, I forget what it's called, the Bimbo bread store in Taylorsville. And they were kind of forced to close because of social distancing and not able to get their product in. But they spent 3 days giving out the remainder of their inventory at Taylorsville Elementary. And they didn't expect any sort of fanfare over that. They just wanted to help out their community. And so they picked an elementary that was close to them, where there was high levels of impoverished students and families. And they just showed up next to our school lunch distribution hub and handed out loaves of bread and other inventory until they were all gone. And so I just get touched by stories like that, people just making incredible sacrifices to help our kids. On that Facebook page, I showed you the story of one of the last stories I showed you was these bus drivers who have no kids to transport have turned into food delivery drivers. And so one of those stories is about a lady named Susie who knows all of her kids by name. And now she's their, not just their bus driver, she's their lunch lady. And that gives these kids some sense of normalcy and helps them to, sorry, I'm going to get a little teary-eyed here, to weather this crisis. Our kids crave that structure and that normalcy, to see familiar faces. They don't get to see their teachers in person, but to see Susie there with a bright and warm smiling face with their lunch is inspiring.
How about you, Michael?
Yeah, well, like Ben, I could think of several. You know, we had a business in our community. In fact, it was a bakery as well, Schmidt's Pastry Cottage in South Jordan, who they decided to give away 2 loaves of bread, one for those that needed it, but then they had to take the other loaf of bread and they had to give it to someone that they knew needed it.
Oh.
And that's inspired a lot of giving. And I just, in crises like these, I think it defines our culture and it defines who we are as a community. It brings out the very best in people. I just know personally we've watched out for our neighbors a little more carefully. We've checked in on those that we may not have always checked in on. Our teachers, as has been mentioned, are the heroes in this. We have teachers that are, and they're so concerned about their students, and they're writing them. You know, I don't know about you guys, if you've seen the trend of actually writing letters again, using snail mail and pen pals, and that's emerged again. And teachers that are taking the time to send individual notes to their students, and just how much they miss them. And my wife's a preschool teacher, and one of the things that she's enjoyed most and that her kids have enjoyed the most is actually seeing her face on a video and a personalized message to each of them. And we see that to a large degree. I can think of several examples, and it's difficult to point out one. And then I guess, and I mentioned this earlier, we've really come to find out who are the most essential workers when it comes to a shutdown like this, because all of a sudden our nutrition workers, who are not always our highest paid employees, obviously, and our custodians and our drivers and our deliverymen, that have kept us literally kept us going and delivered essential items to our students. They're the unsung heroes in all of this. And so I just want to give a shout out to everybody like that. And we have, even though we've had our workday revamped, I think our teachers, if you ask any one of them, have really put in more hours overall than they ever would have in a normal circumstances. And I just want to give a big shout out to them, and to you as business owners, and to you as the chamber who have supported us. I know all of us are feeling hits from this because people are out of work, businesses are shuttered, and yet here we are coming together to talk about the good things that are happening. And so it's nice to be able to overlook some of the challenges and focus on the positives as well. So thank you for that.
I wanted to share Trisha's comment. You guys, and I mean everyone in education, don't get paid enough. Thanks for all you do. And I would echo that, as well as I see a lot of head nods on this call as well. Anything you'd like to offer, any other comments in closing that you'd like to share with this group? And then of course, this video will be posted on social media and on our website as well. But anything else you'd like to share?
Just we're in this together, and it's a pleasure working with everybody to try and find meaningful solutions to help our kids get through this. And so just keep on keeping on, and let's stay united and focused on what's really important.
Yeah, just a big, I guess, a big gratitude hug to all of you, because I think this is accentuated and exemplified exactly why there needs to be a partnership between business and education. We are so intricately linked, and when things shut down like we have had, we really, the essentials are prioritized, and we just appreciate the link that there is between the education and business community.
Thank you. Thank you both for all you do, and for the teachers, the administrators, everyone. This has really kind of stretched everybody into a whole new area. And I'm sure a lot of parents are excited to see school start back up, and hopefully we have fantastic news in the fall, Trish. so we can get back to some sense of normalcy with whatever that looks like, as we continue to look at social distancing. And I want to thank you all very much for the opportunity to put this together. Our Women in Business group, what a great group of ladies, and felt this was a very timely and important topic, and wanted to push that out. So kudos to our board as well, Women in Business. And I see Becky Ivory and Trish Hull and Kim Gilbert here from our board or from our Women in Business board. And with that, on behalf of ChamberWest, wish you all a fantastic remainder of the day and week. And let's look for ways that our businesses can share some love with our teachers and with our educators, and keep on keeping on. And with that, I hope you all have a fantastic day.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.